All right, welcome everybody to week 4 of our teaching tools cohort, where we're taking a group of coaches through developing new tools, being willing to lay down some old ones. And we're presenting these through the SAVI framework. And week 1, we talked about our simplicity tools, how to simplify our message. Week 2, we talked about our adversity tools, how to give the proper amount of challenge to those that we're leading and our players, and finding that pocket and developing those tools. Last week we talked about victory tools and how to clearly define a victory and how measurement is magic, and that which you measure you improve, and really got practical last week on how we would do that. And today we're going to dive into our identity tools, how to use identity in order to improve performance. And so before we dive into these identity tools, I want to share a quick story, two quick stories, so that we can really understand what it means to teach, coach, and lead from a place of firmly rooted identity. And a question that everyone should take a moment and ask themselves right now is is your identity rooted in your performance or in your purpose? Because any of these tools that we share will not be authentic, will not be powerful unless you get to a place where your value, where who you truly are, is rooted not in your performance, which will always fluctuate. As a competitor, as a coach, as an athlete, performance will fluctuate. And if your identity, if your worth, if your value, if your mindset fluctuates according to your performance, then your identity will always be unclear. You as a leader will be very difficult to believe and follow. Whereas if your identity as a leader is rooted in your purpose, why you're doing what you're doing, well, that is when you become inspirational and someone to follow. So we'll get very, very clear, but let me give you two clear examples of this right now. And welcome to everyone that is watching on YouTube on the live stream. And we have a handful of our coaches here live on the Google Meet to answer some questions as well. And I truly hope that this is a time of reflection for each of us as a coach, as that we believe what we say we believe a little bit deeper, and then let that impact and change the way that we show up and coach. So here's our two examples of your identity being rooted in your purpose versus your performance. I'll give one player example and one coach example. First, a player example. When I finished playing in college and was pursuing playing professionally, I went to an ID camp. There's an ID camp for scouts, professional coaches, general managers to take a look at talent and determine if they wanted to offer us contracts. And it was a 3-day ID camp where you played a whole bunch of games in front of, a couple hundred scouts, coaches, whatever. And so on day 1, I was focused solely on my performance. If I play well, I'll have a chance of achieving my dream. I'll have a chance of becoming who I hope to become if I play well. It was a performance-based approach. And after day 1, I went up to the highest level scout there. I was a scout for the Toronto Raptors. And I had an acquaintance with this coach. And I asked him, I said, hey, you saw me play. What do I need to do with my performance in order to get a pro contract, to become a professional player? And I got a very surprising answer. And the answer was, do you have your vision or your identity? Do you have that dream written down somewhere where you see it every day? And I said no, I'm just here trying to perform. I'm here trying to earn a pro contract. And he said, well, then you don't have a chance. He's like, if you don't have your identity, if you don't have your dream or your vision, if you don't have it written down somewhere where you see it every day, it doesn't matter what else you do, you don't have a chance. And I was like, oh man, this is an NBA scout. I ran back to my hotel room, I wrote it down, I put it big. I am a pro basketball player. And I looked at that and I came in day 2 and, performed, played, and went up to him and said, "Hey, I wrote it down today. I read it. I looked at it. I'm like, do you think I'm a pro? Like, how do you think I play?" And he said, "Well, do you have a plan on what a pro would do every single day? How a pro would think, how a pro would act, how a pro would train, how a pro would prepare?" I said, "No, I just wrote it down for the first time. You just told me this." He said, "Well, if you don't have a plan to go along with your purpose, then I don't believe you. You're not actually a pro yet." And I said, "Oh man." So I went back to my hotel room and I wrote down, okay, here's how a pro would prepare, here's how a pro would think, here's how a pro would walk, here's how a pro would eat. I wrote down my plan. And I showed up on the third day and I performed. And it was the final day. And I went up to him after the final day. I said, "Okay, you've seen me play for 3 days. I've done what you've asked. I wrote down my purpose. I wrote down my plan. Do you think I can become a pro?" And he said, "Well, if you live it out every day from now on, you will be a pro." And, it seems kind of like a Mr. Miyagi moment, a little bit ethereal. But when looking back on my performance, on day one, when I was only focused on performance, I played mediocre. On day two, my mindset just started to shift because I started to shift from performance to purpose. My purpose is to be a pro. And then on day three, because all of my focus was on how a pro would show up, how I would actually live according to my purpose, my performance was its best. And, long story short, it wasn't from that ID camp. I did get a chance to play professional basketball. And I honestly believe it's a product of that moment where for the very first time, I started to shift from a performance-based approach to a purpose-based approach. Instead of focusing all of my attention on the scoreboard, or whether I won or lost a game, or whether I, made my shots or missed my shots, I instead zoomed out. And that's the first principle that I want to share with all of our SAVI coaches today, those on the live stream and those on the meet as well, is this principle. When in doubt, zoom out. I think we've all been in a position in coaching that we've doubted ourselves, that we've doubted if we're doing the right thing, if we're running the right offense, if we're leading in the right way. And whenever we doubt, it's usually a product of a poor performance. And when you're doubting, you're zoomed in on a moment, on a loss, on a failure. Moments cause you to doubt. Moments focus on performance. And the principle that I would encourage everyone to write down on a piece of paper, frame and put on their desk, get a tattoo, I don't know. When in doubt, zoom out. Because when you zoom out, you focus on purpose. And when you focus on purpose, you're not going to doubt your purpose. You'll only doubt your performance. And that's where identity-based coaching really, the tools that we're going to get to, they're going to allow you to zoom out more effectively. I mean, go back to the story. At the beginning of the training camp, I was zoomed in. How did I shoot? How did I play? Did I defend? Will I get a contract? By the end of those 3 days, based on just a couple of conversations with this mentor who doesn't even know he was a mentor to me, he changed my mindset and got me to a place of where I zoomed out. What's my purpose? And when you are clear on your purpose, people will follow you. When you're clear on your purpose, you won't doubt your decisions. And when you're clear on your purpose, well, that's when you're going to be able to have an impact that's beyond just winning or losing a basketball game. Okay, that's number one. That's first example. And whether you're in the chat box here on the Meet, whether you're in the chat box on the YouTube, I would love for you just to type into the chat box right now, one sentence. What is your purpose in coaching? Because if you don't have something to zoom out to, if you don't have it written down somewhere where you see it every day, you're going to be easily distracted and you'll end up chasing your tail. So go ahead and type that in now. And what you actually type in is not going to be evaluated. The exercise is the value here. Is you're forced right now to come up with your purpose, right? So if you can't articulate it right away, then you aren't clear enough on your purpose. I inspire coaches and athletes to a joy-filled experience in the game and revolutionize the way the game is taught and played worldwide. That's my purpose. Like I can say it. I can say it off the top of my head. If you can't say it off the top of your head, I doubt your purpose. Not that you have one, but that you've clarified it enough. Awesome. I'm seeing a number of them come in on both the YouTube. I'll read one here: to be a bridge by connecting and supporting people, places, and ideas. I love that. That's beautiful. We've got another one coming in here, and development of mind, body, and soul. Beautiful. These are big purposes. And if you win or lose a game, if you have a poor practice, if you have a conflict with a parent or someone on your staff, when you're zoomed in and it feels bad, zoom out. How can I develop mind, body, and soul in this moment? And then you'll have clarity. That's identity-based coaching. When in doubt, zoom out. Let me give one more example here. I'm reading a book right now called The Blueprint, and the author is talking about when he started investing in cryptocurrencies a few years ago. And as we know, cryptocurrencies are very volatile. There are big ups and big downs. And he really wanted to make money. And so when cryptocurrencies were plummeting and going down, he got scared that he was going to lose his money. So he sold. And then all of a sudden, when cryptocurrency started rising, he got scared that he was missing out. So he bought. And he did this for years, whereas like he got scared and sold when things were on the way down, and he got scared of missing out when things were on the way up and bought. And he lost a ton of money. Because if you sell when things are going down and buy when things are going up, you're going to lose. And this is just a great example of being performance based. He was too zoomed in. He was zoomed in on the moment. He was focused on the performance in the moment of that asset. And so he made bad decisions. Whereas if he zoomed out and said, over time, I believe in this asset class, he would have done the opposite. If he zoomed out and said, I believe in this asset, when it went down, if he believed, he buys, right? If it went up and he believed, right, he holds. And that is how he would have had more success. When you focus on performance, you make bad decisions. And when you focus on your purpose or your beliefs, you make good decisions. So we're going to go into some specific tools for you to use to do this well. But if we don't understand this concept of when in doubt, zoom out, we'll be constantly making bad decisions. All right, your framework now. Let's start to drill down. As we go through the rest of this training, we're going to drill down, and as you know, this is how we do things with each of our teaching tools. One principle, right? Purpose over performance. When in doubt, zoom out. That's the one principle that we apply. Then we're going to give a framework, and we at SAVI, we try to, as often as possible, stick to the rule of three, as I give you a framework to actually apply tools to your teaching and tools to your coaching. And lastly, I'm going to take questions that I've received throughout the week via email or in our app, or any live questions that we get from our SAVI coaches in our Grow community. And I'm going to apply this tool, this framework, to those questions. And everyone will go through the exercise together. So let's go ahead and dive into to the framework. As always, if there's something that you like, if a question comes up for you as we're going through the teaching, please drop it into the chat in either one of our platforms, and I will do my best to work it into some of our teachings. All right, here's the framework. You, me, we. You, me, we. To use the identity tool, apply this framework. You, me, we. You means the player. When we want to use identity tools, we actually want to do direct and individual coaching to players. Here's a question for everyone to answer in the chat box, okay? If you look at all of your feedback, all of your communication, all of your verbal coaching, when you put yourself into a practice or a training or even a game, what percentage of your coaching is corporate to the whole team versus what percentage of your coaching or feedback or training is direct to the individual? Let's go ahead and do a percentage out of 100. Please put into the chat box your percentage of you coaching, direct coaching you to the players. If the total would equal 100, what percent is you coaching? Please drop that into your chat box now. Brian, thanks for dropping your purpose into the chat box as well. What percent is you coaching? Please drop it into the chat box. Cool. So we're getting some numbers like 30% is you coaching to the individual. We're getting some examples here. 20% is you to the individual. Okay. Continue to drop them in. I know many of you are thinking about it. And again, the purpose of these questions is to identify a baseline so that you can decide if you want to adjust it. Here's what I've observed is I've gotten to be around the best coaches in the game. I'm shocked by how much is you coaching. An example would be Greg Popovich. I got to be around him in Team USA for multiple days and multiple practices a few years ago. What I observed over those three days that I watched him coach, I got to see Coach K coach in the same training camp. The majority of their coaching was you coaching. Higher level coaches spend more time on the you, on the individual, and less time on the we. And I really appreciate the numbers that you have put in because it's consistent with what I have observed in my travels and working with most coaches. Most coaches don't spend enough time on you coaching. And yet, if we think about, I don't know if you ever read Sacred Hoops by Phil Jackson, as he talks about coaching the Chicago Bulls, nearly the entire book is about you coaching. How did he unlock a player like Dennis Rodman? How did he shift a vicious competitor to being a better leader in Michael Jordan? How did he get an unselfish player to be more aggressive in Tony Kukoc? Every chapter is you coaching. And identity tools, why we start with the you, is I want to encourage each of you to think about how can I first coach the individual before I try to fix the team. That's you coaching. So let me give some specific one. I challenge each and every one of you as you go into your seasons to prepare your mind and build an environment to have you coaching. And what this is going to require is for you to get an index card, a note card, and fill it out for every player on your team. And I would encourage you to do this in a 3-step process. It's all under you coaching, okay? This is going to develop coaching the identity of each player to help that player find their purpose, to help that player not be focused as much on performance, to help that player get high clarity on their identity, who they are becoming, so that then they can be a more valuable piece of your team. Here's the 3 things you fill out on the note card for every player: strength, stretch, and roar. Roar like a lion. Strength, stretch, and roar. When you can provide this level of clarity and purpose for each player, everything that they do in a training session, in a practice with their individual personal trainer, it's going to fit into the team better. I was speaking with one of our SAVI coaches who is having a very unique challenge. And his challenge is this: there's a new trainer that has moved into his area that all of his players have gone to start training individually. Now that's a unique challenge because, okay, good, they're in the gym outside of season, okay, unique in that way because he's got a really good team, has a chance to go and win state this year. But the challenge is now that this trainer is telling the players their identity, what type of player they should be. And the challenge is that that identity is not in line with the roles that he needs them to star in order for his team to be successful. So he's like, what do I do? These players are coming in and they're saying, I'm this type of player. When for the last 3 years, I've been saying, you got to be this type of player on our team. So there's a conflict now. And so the conflict is coming from this coach not clearly identifying the you identity for his players. If you don't define your own identity or you don't define the identity for your players, someone else will do it for you. And that's why we need to be proactive here. So every player should know their strength, their stretch, and their roar from you on a note card within the first 2 weeks of the season. That's you coaching. Strength. What do you believe this player brings to the team? What do you think is their greatest value? What I found when I've done this for my players is shock. Players like, oh, you think I'm good at this? I didn't even think I was good at this. They're shocked, right? Shocked because like, oh, I've been putting all my attention on scoring, and you tell me that my strength is defense and rebounding. I'm shocked that that's where you find my value. And when there is shock, it's a lack of clear identity. You identifying your player's identity and their purpose. Because when you tell them their strength, this is very important. Say, the, the better you display your strength, the more playing time, the more trust you get. But if they think they're earning playing time by driving to the rim and scoring, and you don't care about that for them, you want them to earn their playing time by defense and rebounding, well, you got a problem, and you're gonna be frustrated, and they're gonna be frustrated all season long, because you're like, come on, I need more from you, and they're like, more shots, right? No, I need more defense and rebounding, because you haven't clarified it for every person in writing. Strength, what do they bring? Okay, and they know that what I bring is how I get playing time. Stretch. This is what I need you to stretch into. This is what I need you to get better at. It's got to be absolutely clear. When you go through your season and properly identify, hey, now we're in war games, stick to your strengths. Now we're in sandbox time, work on your stretch. Now they actually know what they're supposed to be shifting their focus on. You can't focus on multiple things at once. And so if you haven't identified those two things for them, you haven't done great you coaching yet. And then lastly, the roar. My friend Edward LeBlanc actually shared this with me from a book that he was reading. I've embraced it. I've loved it. I've used it. I think it's a really powerful image. Feel free to use it with your players as well. Their roar, like each one of you put a purpose in there that was bigger than winning games. Inspire athletes to choose excellence. Be a bridge that connects people. Like mind, body, and soul. Okay, these are big things. Like you're developing the whole person. The roar is a personal challenge that will make them a more effective basketball player. The roar is helping them find their purpose as who they are becoming with their identity that will make them a better basketball player. And here's why we call it a roar. This is an image that I've used with my team that you might want to use with your team if you choose to introduce it in this way. Okay? How lions hunt. A pride of lions, when trying to hunt, let's say antelope, will actually station their biggest, baddest, oldest, with the biggest mane, arthritic lion at one edge of a field or clearing. And they'll sit him down. And all the young, strong, ferocious, quick lions will go and encircle the opposite side of the clearing and sit down in the grass. This old lion, when they're in place, will let out the biggest, baddest, loudest roar that scares the antelope. And all the antelope run away from this roar, from what they think is the danger, from what they're afraid of, and they run right in to the waiting teeth and claws of the quick, athletic, strong lions, and they get eaten and devoured. Lions know that their prey will run away from the roar, whereas the only way for an antelope to actually escape and survive is to run towards the roar. The danger, basketball is a game of opposites, life's a game of opposites, the danger is actually away from the roar. Whereas if they ran towards the roar, there's just one old lion there. They could get away. And the roar is that thing that our athletes are afraid of doing, are afraid of stretching into, whether it's holding a teammate accountable, whether it's communicating in a loud voice, whether it's standing alone and not following the crowd, whether it's getting in the weight room and tearing up their body. Maybe that's the roar they're afraid of, right? We all know, like, there's something that they're afraid of that's holding them back. And so it's like, instead of running away from that fear, they got to run towards the fear to become who they're becoming. If you as a coach gave a note card to every player, this is you coaching with their strength, stretch, and roar, you would have high clarity, you would have high standards, and at the very least, you would show a high level of care in the individual that would make every piece of feedback that you give for the rest of the season more effective. And it would also, this is key. I'm sorry I've waited so long to share this one. It would also cause you to limit and focus your coaching to within those three areas and connect it to a purpose. Hey, every time you catch the ball, peek at the rim, because remember, your strength is your passing. And when you peak, you can really use your strength. I connected it to their strength. Everything's got to connect, right? Hey, remember, your stretch is to play more under control. So at the end of your drives, you need to get on 2 feet because that's going to give you the control. You're playing out of control right now. This is your stretch. Every piece of coaching must connect with their strength, stretch, or roar, right? And when you first get into the gym, I need you to get the rest of your teammates started on pre-practice. Remember, your roar is holding your teammates accountable. That's an opportunity for you to run towards your fear. And so everything connects to their purpose and not just their performance. As opposed to saying, you're not peeking at the rim, you're turning it over, or you're playing weak and off balance, right? That's performance coaching, performance. But when you connect it to their purpose, their strength, stretch, and roar, well, then you're going to see traction. It's different. You're coaching the same stuff. It's just why you're asking them to do the things. That is purpose-based coaching. Okay, let me pause, and I'll actually ask my friend Jennifer here. Jennifer, when you were playing, how well would you say your coaches did in coaching your purpose versus coaching your performance? Yeah, never purpose, right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and same here, same here. And like even now, it's kind of like even giving me goosebumps because it's like, what if, what if we could be a new era of coaches that this is what revolutionizing the game is. Like, think about how much more you would have flourished as a player and a person, right? And so that's why we're doing it. Jennifer, how well when you were a college coach, um, how well would you say you coached according to purpose? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that honest answer. You said something so good there. Um, when their why wasn't in line with yours, you weren't able to connect with them and serve, right? And like that's, I think we all have had those players. We've all had those players. And so the mind shift is instead of getting everyone on board with your purpose, the mindset is finding their purpose and then connecting their purpose with our purpose. And that's key because coaches, we write people off. And that doesn't mean we don't hold standards. That doesn't mean we say, hey, this is unacceptable here. It just means that we do our work to connect purpose. I really appreciate you sharing that one. Really powerful. Okay, let's go to the next tool. So that's the U tool. It's connecting with their purpose and not their performance in a very specific way. Strength, stretch, and roar. And connecting that and having a higher percentage of your coaching be you coaching. And I would suggest, just as a baseline, 50%. 50% of it would be a really good baseline because teams are made up of individuals. And you should ask your team. You should ask I did this last night. I went around our group last night and I said, what was your takeaway from this training session, from this game session? And no one of the 24 players I had there, no one shared anything that I coached the team on. Like, no one. Everyone shared something I coached them individually on because that's all we care about. Like, what feedback? right? Like, Jayla, our most athletic player, she's like, man, when you showed me how important it was to play off 2 feet, that was it, right? I said that one time. I talked about spacing and movement till I was blue in the face. No one said spacing and movement, right? Oh, I figured out how to get my shot off. That's the only thing they remembered, right? So, like, you coaching is the most effective form of coaching when you can connect it to their purpose and your team's purpose. That's why I put you first. Because if it's the only thing you take away from this identity teaching tool, your team and you will be better served. Okay? All right. Me. This is me, the coach. Me, the coach. What is your purpose? You've already listed it, you've written it down. And my challenging question to you is, how many times in a practice do you stop and reflect on your purpose? Do you zoom out? How many times? For me, the answer is not enough. For me, the answer is I see a mistake and I attack it. For me, the answer is I see a lack of effort and I attack it, right? I don't as often as I need to zoom out to my identity statement. I inspire coaches and athletes to experience the joy of the game. Because if I zoomed and did that, like, okay, wait, hang on, what's my purpose? All right, how are we going to experience the joy of the game here? And it's going to change my whole demeanor. It's going to change my vision and what I see, right? So that would be me. Now, when you zoom out, that's step one, okay? What's my purpose? When you zoom out, then you ask yourself the second question, okay? Which is, am I super modeling my purpose? Am I super modeling it, right? Because a lot of times players can't hear what we say because our actions are too loud, right? Like if I am committed to the joy of the game, but I'm showing frustration and anger, there is no way that I'm going to get my message through, right? So that's the second step, right? Am I super modeling it? Okay. And then the third piece for the me is, am I clear? So if players don't know what to do, or if your team isn't achieving what you want to achieve, chances are you haven't clarified your message well enough, or you haven't communicated it often enough. All right? What's my purpose? One. Okay? Am I super modeling it with my demeanor, with my actions, with my words? Two. And three, have I been clear enough about what our purpose is here? That would be the me evaluation. So let me pause for another reply in the chat box. Per practice, per game, per training session if you're a trainer. Just type in or reply in the comments below if you're watching the YouTube later. How many times per session do you pause and reflect on me? Am I coaching according to my purpose? Right? Am I super modeling our purpose? And am I clear? Just put number of times. Practice game. How many times do you zoom out and focus on me? I answered for myself, and I'll even just evaluate myself last night. I'll say 3. And when I say three, I think, yeah, I'd say not enough. I'd say not enough. Like a really simple trigger to zoom out would be every time you transition. Like transition from one activity to the next, from one drill to the next, from one game. Just, all right, let me zoom out here. All right, what's my purpose? Remind myself of it, right? Okay, am I super modeling that purpose? And am I really, really clear about the purpose? And that can show up in so many different ways, but it will become clear to you once you zoom out. Yeah, I'm getting 2, 3. Claire said 0 on games. It's so true. It's harder to zoom out in games because we just keep looking up that scoreboard and trying to change it, right? And that's just performance-based coaching as opposed to purpose-based one. And as we found with my original story, the more purpose-based you can be in your coaching, the more your performance will actually improve over the long term. Okay, that's the me. And these are the 3 filters: you, me, we. Yeah, good. Thanks, Brian. Brian zooms out mostly post-game and post-practice, and I think that's accurate for many of us. Let's try to get some more within the practices. Okay, we. The we identity is the team. And I put this last for a reason. It's an order, okay? You coach the players, me check yourself. We, let's focus on the team. And the three ways you can do this would be one, hold the standard. Remember, for those of you that were part of our standards cohort last month, your standards determine your culture. And your culture may play out and look differently, but your standards are what are your non-negotiables for your team. It's how you do what you do, not what you do. Your standard isn't, shooting a lot of threes. That's not a standard, okay? Your standard is how you train and shoot threes. It's how you do it. You do it with energy, you do it with communication, you do it with precision, you do it with hustle, you do it with a growth mindset. I don't know. Okay, that's your standard. So are we holding the standard? Have I clearly taught our principle? Have I clearly taught our principle? And the principle-based approach is how we've designed the race and space offense and the lock left defense. It's 10 principles that we believe. It's not how we do the principles, that's the standards. It's 10 principles that we believe. We believe in racing the arcs, that's a principle, right? We believe in hunting the pass, that's a principle. Just determine your principles and make sure you talk about principles first before you talk about techniques. And then third, establish the process. I'll remind those three and then we'll play it out a little bit, okay? Hold the standard, teach the principle, establish the process. So I'm going to ask everyone right now to do a little bit of work. You can jot it down in your notes. If you have time, you can put it in the chat box. I want you to go 1, 2, 3. What's one standard you have for your team? What are 2 principles you have for your team? And what are 3 skills that you want your team to do effectively? 1 standard, 2 principles, 3 skills. And this will be a good teaching check for me to see if I've been clear on what a standard is, what a principle is, and what a skill is. Because we'll see by what you guys put in. I received this email from another one of our SAVI coaches this week who was asking me how to structure her practices for her middle school team. She's a high school varsity coach. For her middle school teams that are in junior high teams that are starting up. She's like, what should I practice? And I said, okay, we got to be identical. So I want you to tell me what are your standards that you want to uphold? What are your principles that you want to teach? And what are the skills that you want to see out of your players? Because we can't even begin to build a practice until we know those things. Most coaches, and I'm afraid that many of us might actually have it backwards. You're like, oh, got to start building my practice. Let me pull my practice plans from last year and then edit them. No, you don't start there. When in doubt, zoom out. What are your standards? What are your principles? What are your skills? And then you build your practice. So there's no way that I could help Brooke build her practice until I knew these things. So you're doing the work right now. I'm going to talk through Brooks as an example of how she would do this. Because remember, the systems have to be in place. Standards, principles, systems. All right, so Brooke said this, okay? So one, their standard is communication. And I would challenge Brooke to be like, okay, define it. Communication, everybody has a different level of understanding. Player last night, her roar was to communicate more and loudly. And I was super proud of her because I coached her in her roar last night. We were doing, okay, what did you learn? She said, I learned that I don't talk loud enough. She said I was talking all the time, but no one ever did anything I said. So I have to talk loud. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a win. This is so good, right? So it's like, so you got to define communication, right? So for Brooke, it's communication. That's her standard, okay? The concepts that they wrote down was this. They want to lock the ball left. They want to shoot the ball well, okay? That's a principle. And I'm kind of interpreting a little bit here because there are quite a bit. And they want to race the arcs through bolting. Okay, they want to lock the ball left, they want to shoot the ball well, they want to race the arcs through bolting. Those are principles that they want to have. Okay, now or concepts. All right, principles, concepts, same thing. Okay, lastly, skills. They want to make layups, they want to rebound well, and they want to drive well. Okay, so those are skills. All right. Now, once we have those things of our standard, our concepts, and our skills, now we got to build our systems. And a system is just your practice plan, what drills and games that you use to ensure that everything points back to those things. Everything points back to those things. Standard, concepts, and skills. So now we build out our practice plan. So I'm going to get real specific here for Brooke as an example, and you can just plug and play your own. And I'll talk through a couple of yours, okay? So one, pre-practice. That's a system. I believe that every coach should have a pre-practice which is focused just on the skills that you've identified. Pre-practice that when players come to the gym, whether they come in 5 minutes before practice, 10 minutes before practice, or right when practice starts, they know exactly what they're doing to focus on the skills. So whatever your 3 skills are, so Brooke, whatever 3 skills you have, you want to design pre-practice that where they're going through their tune shooting, they're going through their attacking dribbles and ball handling, and they're going through their, I think the other skill that you had was rebounding. You should have rebounding in pre-practice. Every coach I talk to is like, oh, I want to rebound better. And yet they don't incorporate rebounding into their player skill development work. Massive disconnect, right? So if it's important to you, it's got to be a part of the pre-practice. So that would be one aspect of how we would build a system around it. Then we go into our prime. So after pre-practice, we got to prime our environment. You prime your environment by holding your standard. So whatever drill you're going to use as your prime, it should be the same drill or the same drill throughout your entire season. I like to use attack training. Maybe you use 2-line layups. I don't know. But the goal of the prime is we're not moving on until we hit our standard of communication, which is loud, early, and often. So until I hear loud communication that's early, that's before the rep happens, and it's often, we're not moving on from attack training. So we're holding our standard here early. Okay, so that's how I incorporate the standard for your communication, Brooke. Okay, 3. Then we go into our 4-quarter practice. I don't like focus on more than 4 concepts in a practice, and you might do less. So your first quarter of your practice, whether you're doing small-sided games, a 5-on-5 game, some drill work, whatever, the first quarter of your practice is focused on one principle, racing the arcs through bolting. Now, if you know that's the principle that you want, then you got to ask what game or what drill is going to allow me to get the most focused reps on racing the arcs through bolting out of my first 3 steps. That determines what you're doing in your first quarter. Okay, my second quarter is we're going to be focused on locking the ball left. Okay, if that's my objective, what game or what drill is going to get me the most focused reps on locking the ball left? You don't just pick a drill and then decide what you're going to teach, what principle you're going to teach. You identify your principle, and that determines the game or the drill, right? Then we go into our third quarter, okay? And our third quarter concept for them was shooting. So, okay, now what game is going to emphasize us taking and making shots? What is going to emphasize great shot selection, right? So, an example would be, okay, we're playing a 50-point game. Right? And 50-point game means every time a shot goes up, we call out how many points the shot is worth on our shot scale. So if it's a wide open layup, we call out 9. If it's a wide open off the catch 3 by a green light shooter, we call out a 7. If it's a so-so shot that's contested or off balance, we call out a 5. It's a third grade shot that's embarrassing, we call out 3. And if it goes in, they get that many points, we play to 50. Right? So that would be a way for us to establish a system that emphasizes a principle or a concept that we really, really value. Fourth quarter. Okay, now I'd go back to what do we need to hammer home? And I wouldn't even, Brooke, I'm speaking to Brooke specifically because it was her question, I wouldn't even predetermine what principle you're going to address in the fourth quarter. This goes back to our simplicity tool of observation. Observe during your first 3 quarters of your practice which one needs more attention, and then just go back to it, right? And that goes back to how clear is your message and how often do you repeat it? How often do you repeat it doesn't mean how many times do you yell it out. That means how often do you come back to the same message. And now you have a really effective practice plan that where you held your standard, you focused on your player's skills during your pre-practice, and you were able to hit your principles multiple times through a real simple practice plan. So that's how I think the we, right? You, me, we. That's how I think a we system would be built according to your standards, your principles, and your systems. Okay, let me pause there. Um, I love how you put your answers in here, Carlos, with your standards. Oh, I love that. Honor God through actions, play, and effort. And then you'll just constantly define that, right? And then you say, okay, your principles. We race in space on offense. We lock left on defense. We erase rebounds. We play in control and read the game. Reads are everything. Beautiful. Now, obviously, you can't do all of that at all times. You got to choose which you're focusing on, right? So you just identify it. Skills, peeking at the rim for vision, okay? String stops and reads based on roles. Love it. I think that's really powerful, okay? So here's the homework assignment for everybody. And then I'll go through and answer a couple more questions, and then we can transition to the questions. Homework assignment. Design. Let me zoom out. Fill out note cards. Fill out a note card for a single player as an exercise. 1. 2. Write your purpose, your identity as a coach somewhere where you can see it every day. Put it there. 3. Build a single practice plan according to your 1 standard, your 2 principles, and your 3 skills. Like I just kind of played it out. That's probably a 30-minute homework assignment. 1 note card for a player. Write out your identity statement and put it on your desk. Tape it to your mirror. Your purpose as a coach, so it helps you zoom out. Do it before the season clouds your feeling, your emotions, your judgment. 3. Build out a practice plan according to the standard, the principles, and your skills. If you invested that 30 minutes, you will grow and sharpen your identity-based teaching tools. And I think you will be very well served. Okay, if you have any questions over anything that I've shared, please drop it into your chat box, or if you're on the Google Meet, feel free to come off of mute and ask it. Carlos, maybe I'll just ask you first. What would you say is your biggest takeaway from these identity-based teaching tools today, Carlos? Yeah. Mm, mm, mhm. Mhm. Right. Mhm. Yeah, no, that's really, really wise. And this is why, John Wooden said that he prepared 2 hours for a 1 hour practice because this is the preparation. It wasn't he was just planning practice, right? It's like, what drill should we do? No, it's building an identity based approach to creating a practice plan with a you, me, and we. Now, I don't think he used those exact terms, but these are tools that I've observed great coaches just naturally have, and sometimes they don't even know that they have it. It's these filters and these lenses. So I think that's really wonderful and beautiful. Let me see if there's any other questions about this particular thing on either of our chats here. Okay, Brian, actually Claire first. Can you summarize what Carlos was saying? Okay, I think it was a little unclear. So Carlos shared that he needs to give additional thought and preparation to the strength, stretch, and roar and how to articulate that so that players don't feel limited or put in a box, but they actually feel empowered. And then how to communicate that. And it's true. And that's very well said. Thanks, Claire. And Brian asks, when is there value in talking to the whole team versus just, the individual coaching? I think before and after an exercise, and I'm using the term exercise to like encompass whether it be a drill or a game or whatever. I think that's the main time. I think too often we coach the team concurrently, which I actually had to have a conversation with one of my assistant coaches mid game. He came in and was sitting on the bench as an assistant coach during a game, and we got to rebound, we got to pass the ball, move the ball, spacing, and just like yelling it in a loud voice constantly throughout the game. And I had to stop and say, hey, no more, no more live coaching. I want you to identify what an individual needs to do, and when they sub off, you give them individual coaching. And I had to limit him in that way because it was completely useless what he was doing. There is no way that the players could adjust, take it in, and really it was more of a distraction than anything. And so I think even for me, live in the game, I would only give you coaching live during gameplay. And I would do that in moments of pause, right? Ball being inbounded, free throw, maybe defense is set and my racker's walking the ball up, and or someone's sitting on the porch, while something else is happening, whatever. Like only give you coaching in those moments, and I would apply that same principle to if you were coaching an activity in practice. Only give you coaching, whereas the we coaching, the team coaching, I think I prepare them. Okay, we're focusing on the principle of racing the arcs through bolting here. I'm going to be looking and watching for your first three steps, and I want to see who the best bolter is on their first three steps and who can make great reads when they get behind the defense or putting pressure on the rim. I'm going to be looking for that. Play game, get a winner and a loser. I just go you coaching in there. And then the game afterwards, they come back together, Brian, and afterwards, then I do some we coaching there as well. All right, white team, you won. And I would say that the white team won because they consistently had better bolts and better reads, and they actually hit players for nines with better vision, right? Dark team, you lost because you dribbled without vision and ran at a comfortable speed, right? So that would be kind of we feedback. I'm going to give you a chance to change that. We're going to play again. And your only chance at winning black team is to blankety blank. So I think kind of before and after is a great time for we coaching, where you coaching is more often live. And I would suggest that going back to our teaching tool from week one, that before and after would fall into that 21-second coaching. It's 21 seconds or longer. It's usually to the whole team, and you're teaching your principles, or you're teaching a skill, or you're teaching your standard a little bit more. Right? Whereas in the midst of a game or activity, it's 7-second soundbite coaching. It's you coaching within 7-second sound bites. And I hope that everyone is kind of, seeing how all these tools connect and they prop each other up. The simplicity tools of 7-11-21 is a way that you can deliver identity-based coaching. So that's a really wonderful question, Brian. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to take these last 5 minutes, and Claire, maybe if you can make a note, we'll actually pull this out and post it in the app to talk about the 737 drill. Got a question about 737. Feel free to jump off as we're done. It'll be posted in the app. I just want to take this opportunity to record it. I'm going to keep recording live, but that ends our hours for today for the cohort of teaching tools. I really appreciate everyone that did take the time to jump on live. We had 11 people on the YouTube at different times. We had 4 people here on the on our Google Meet. We're starting off we're going to be starting our cohort for next month, which is usually 10 to 15 coaches that participate in our cohorts monthly. Next month, you actually have a choice. We're going to be doing 2 cohorts. We're either going to be doing a deep dive into the application and practice planning around lock left for those coaches that want to refine their lock left or start it. We're going to have a lock left cohort. And we're also going to have a shooting cohort, which isn't going to be focused on necessarily teaching individual shooting, but rather how to establish systems for a team that wants to prioritize making more shots this season. And so you'll have your choice of which of those cohorts you'd like to do. We're kicking it off with as always, our webinar. If you've got a coach in your coaching community that you think would be interested in locking left or making more shots, please invite them to the free webinar this Sunday. An email just went out about that, and we'll be posted on socials. Copy the link. I'd really appreciate if you would invite 1 to 2 coaches in your network to come check us out. So thank you guys. I'm going to go record just a little bit of feedback on this 737. But until next time, stay savvy, and thank you for your time. Deuces. All right, we're going to do a quick 5-minute teaching and clarification around our 737 drill. And to stay in line with what we've been talking about with identity-based coaching is let's connect it. So we've already established and held our standard for how we do something. Let's say it is we communicate in advance. And so that's our standard. We're communicating in advance, and that's going to show up in this drill, in this game rather, through players sheepdogging or reminding their teammates in advance to transition quickly. Now, our objective, our principle that we're attempting to teach here, is I'm sharing my screen with kind of a visual of what this would look like. Our principle that we're focused on is how we race the arcs and how we do that through bolting and how we read the back of the defender's head. So 737 is named because there's 7 players on the court in this first iteration. You'll see that we have 5 blue players on the blue team and 2 red players that are going to be permanent defense. 7 players on the court. 30. This is a 30-second timed competition. The offensive team has 30 seconds to score as many points as possible. The final 7 is for the world record that any team has reported or that I've observed that a team has scored in 30 seconds. The score, the point system is by 1s and 2s for made baskets, and the blue team is going to be going one way then the other way. If the ball goes out of bounds, if it's a missed shot, it's only 1 shot up. If the defense steals it and ends the possession, they immediately drop the ball and go the other way. And they're attempting to score by 1s and 2s, 1 point for any score inside the arc, 2 points for any outside the arc. And we're working on bolting our first 3 steps. The first player to get behind the single defender, it becomes the rim runner, puts pressure on the rim for a 9 for a wide open layup. And we have our players executing their transition roles so that they're moving quickly. The rule for the defense on this is that when we blow the whistle to start and the clock starts counting down, is the one defender must wolf the ball. And we define wolfing the ball as picking it up as soon as it crosses half court. The defender is not back protecting the rim. They're picking it up across half court. They're trying to steal vision by locking it left and putting the ball to jail. They're finding the ball handler, whoever it may be, wherever they may be, and they wolf it. Every other offensive player is bolting to their spot. So bolting to their lock in the corner, bolting to their lock in the corner, bolting to the porch, dragging behind the ball, whatever. The first player to get behind the defense puts pressure on the rim, becomes a rim runner. If the offense has a rim runner, everyone else just continues to their roles and their spots. Our ball handler, the moment they see someone's behind the defense for a 9, is trying to pass ahead for a 9. You get one shot attempt. As soon as we see a 9 attempted, everyone else is bolting to their spots the other direction. Ball goes through the net or a miss, right? And our racker's probably, bolting here. Ball went through the net right there. Bolting to their lock, going the other direction. And now when the ball gets outletted and they're going the other direction and we're attacking and the ball is getting wolfed, first person that can get behind the defense is putting pressure on the rim. And we're looking to kick ahead for a 9. The moment that 9 is shot, everyone's bolting the other way, doing their jobs. So the offensive team is going versus the defensive team. The defense is live, trying to get deflections, trying to put pressure on the ball. And the way that teams have gotten 7 points is they get 5 layups or 5 nines, and then as they have their final 5 seconds for the possession, they're finding their best 3-point shooter, and they're probably shooting a 7 or an open 3 on a hit ahead or a kickback to try to make that for 2 points to get their 7 points. I've not yet seen anybody get 8. If your team gets 8, please let me know so it can become the 7:38 drill. What you'll find is this is great conditioning. I like to run this instead of sprints, and then we would just rotate. 2 of the blue players would stay on defense. The rest of the blue would rotate off, and the next team on the sideline, whether you do it with 2 teams or 3 teams, is rotating, holding our standard of early, often, and loud communication, reminders before they're needed, and they're set up, and within 5 seconds we're blowing the whistle and playing it again. And you just keep rotating. I like to go OD out, OD out, OD out. And that is how we execute and run our 7:37 drill. And then, if you want to filter it down into skills, then we would give some reminders on skills. Bolts, first 3 steps, head down. Then start to look to see if you're behind the defense. Peaks, the moment that the ball hits your fingers, you're peeking to see if there's a 9 ahead of you. We only pass ahead for 9s. Breakouts, when you get a rebound, if there's no 9 ahead of you, break out and cover ground with your dribble. So these are skills that would then fit into the principles that all can be focused on at different points during this activity. That's the 737. I'm Tyler. This is SAVI, and I hope that serves you. Until next time.